Hi guys, welcome to the Improvement Season podcast. We are back in your ears after you had a fantastic coaching corner with
amazing
a few different people.
We are back in your ears.
So we always talk about the visual because we're here sat seeing each other, but obviously I think a lot of people just end up just hearing us in there.
Yeah, that's true.
Ears.
It came just like out of nowhere for me, at least. Like, okay, here we are in your ears. Oh, yeah, that's true, actually.
And yeah, it's nice knowing that the coaching corners are going down so well, actually.
Yeah. Yeah, the guests should have more speaking time, though.
Oh, were you...
Yeah, I was talking a lot. when editing the episode, I realized like there was one section where I was just going on for like 10 minutes by myself, and I was just like, holy shit. Sorry for every listener who needed to endure me talking for like 10 minutes straight. And that's not even my mother's tongue. How is that even possible?
Rants. Yeah,
I mean,
true.
I should feel very unconfident, and I should actually not talk that much, to be honest.
I even struggle for 10 minutes, but I think that's just me.
Yeah, I mean, I never actually make it to 10 minutes. Weirdly enough that I actually made it here to 10 minutes. So, yeah.
So how are things on your end? Where are we now?
We are in week number 1
now
of the Metabolite block, and I just finished my second session of the day, and by that also finished the first week. And man, there's just something about Metabolite work and just like training. And I even said it to some of my athletes that you have to have a masochistic side to that you actually enjoy, that self-induced pain. And I don't want to call it suffering, but it kind of is suffering in the moment, because doing something like, so I program for myself, hack squats to walking lunges. And this comes after 2 activation sets of hack squats. So I'm starting the day with somewhat in the lower repetition range of hack squats to kind of pre-fatigue my legs already a little bit and get a little bit more of the high threshold motor units recruited. And then I move over to the higher repetition stuff. Then I do the hack squats in the higher repetition. And then I'm moving over to walking lunges immediately. And while I was doing that, it's just like, you can feel your quads ripping apart. And at the same time, every single time you're going down, it's just like, holy shit, that hurts. But it's so good at the same time. Come on, continue. It's just, you have to be somewhat fucked up in your head to actually enjoy stuff like that. This is. Have you ever seen those people who are actually getting some hooks through their skin and doing them bungee jumping? So I'm not saying that bodybuilding is like hardcore, because if there is like a masochistic hobby, then this is like bungee jumping with just hooks on your skin. So you're using basically your own skin as a support. That is dog shit crazy. Like, that is supposed to be a pain that is insane. So yeah, bodybuilding in that case, it's kind of for pussies, but still, I think like, There's some crazy side to that. That's all I'm saying.
It's like some people enjoy like having nails scraped down their back during sex or something. There must be something to it for some people. I don't think bodybuilding's quite that. Well, Arnie always said the pump is like coming, so there's something going on there.
Do you feel that way though?
No. Just that would be incredibly
like an
awkward.
honest question though. Like, I don't know. This is something that was actually. So every once in a while, I'm thinking of like, okay, how do other people perceive training to be like? And also just like something like failure training, for example. When people are referring to failure training, what does it feel like for them? Stuff like that, right? And if Arnold Schwarzenegger is talking about, this is such a good sensation, that must mean he's just full of adrenaline and dopamine. That is just like such a huge, pleasant sensation for him, which I've never experienced just from training, basically. I mean, training is all fun and dandy, but a sensation that is close to calming, yeah. I mean, the pump is cool, but it's still a little bit different.
This is actually quite hilarious because clients don't really know what the pump is. They're like, what is it? And I could only imagine if some clients have never asked me and they're just like, oh yeah, I know Arnie, he talks about the pump and this is what the pump is. Yeah. And they're doing something really wrong during their training to experience the sensation that he's talking about. So yeah, I don't get it, but I know what he means by it. I think at least what he means by it. So yeah, walking lunges, mate, I'm doing those twice a week for my quad metabolites because they're just, nothing gets me like them. Like I could do like high rep leg extensions, maybe they're pretty, actually they're pretty brutal, but the pump is not like, because I do walking lunges, our gym has like 2 floors. I go upstairs to do them because there's a bit more space. Okay. And first week I was leaving like 3 reps in reserve still on those pump sets. And I tried to walk downstairs and I'm just like, oh, holy shit, I can't, I'm like, I could fall if I tried to walk normally.
But mate, I had the same experience here. This was the first week and it has been a long time ever I've done walking lunges. Must have been last year because even in the lockdown situation, of course, we've been doing a lot of kind of metabolite-ish kind of work. But in our apartment, of course, in the old apartment especially, we didn't have the space in doing something like walking lunges. And now being back, there's just something completely different to something like split squats, Bulgarian split squats, and also lunges that no other exercise can replicate, even though that the range of motion you would assume isn't the greatest one, right? And still, the tension that you're putting on your quads, it's just ridiculous. And especially then supersetting that with a different exercise, it's crazy.
Yeah, one day I'm just like giant setting it. So I've just got like a target rep range and I do as many sets as I need to. I use quite a lightweight to achieve that. And then the next day I'm doing walking lunges and then straight into like using the same weight into like squats. So it's a really lightweight for squats, but because you've just done like walking lunges close to failure, I don't get many reps on the squat. They're horrendous, but pump training or the metabolite stuff, for some muscle groups, I'm a bit like, it's all like for delts, like it's pretty good for delts, but maybe because there are smaller muscle groups or something. Oh, hamstrings, I don't even hardly ever bother doing it.
So when it comes to the metabolite training in it for itself, everything is kind of set up around that, except for somewhat the back and the hamstrings, because I have the feeling that those 2 muscle groups, or those areas rather, because of the entire back, it's a little bit harder to actually get. We've talked about it. It's a different sensation when it comes to the pump in those areas than, for example, with the chest or the quads. And that's why when it then comes to metabolite techniques or so for those body parts, I mean, when you take a look at my prior mesocycle to the one I'm doing now, the hamstrings, not that much has changed already, because I don't really feel I get a lot out of high repetition leg curls, for example. And using something like mile reps on leg curls doesn't really work for me either. So that's why it looks very similar. Whereas something for the chest or arms or the quads, that looks quite different to the way I've been using or doing things before.
Yeah.
How's it for you?
No, very similar. It's very much like I never really put a ton of focus on the metabolite work. It's kind of like I just don't want to do so much.
I missed that. Could you say
that? It wasn't Siri.
I don't know what sounded like me saying, hey, Siri. So sorry about that. That really put me off. I was like, what the hell is going on here? I still keep the kind of backbone from the previous mesocycle in terms of, like you said, like the heavy work is still there, so I can still focus on that. And I just have to make sure that I don't do so much of that. So then when I go into metabolite work, I'm like, I've already got a killer like pump and everything, because I know the metabolite work will just, I'm done. Like for that muscle group, once I've done that, there's nothing more for it to be able to do. So yeah, I'm very, very similar in that regard. And I don't use it for hamstrings. I use it a little bit for back. I get a little bit from it with, I've been doing what they called like lat press or straight arm push downs straight into a pull down. That works okay. But it's just not the same for like chest. Like chest is just wild what it does. And like quads is the biggest for sure.
The only thing that I'm doing for back, for example, is the same with as you, but not supersetting it with a different exercise. It's just like instead of only having two exercises for the back, I'm actually having 3, and then the last one is also something like lat press or lat push downs, where I'm just like being able to do it more so in the higher repetition range and then kind of more so isolating that part. But that's basically the only thing. And then I've given it a try, doing what you've actually suggested, and doing something like pack deck to push-ups. And that's great. That is amazing, to be honest. And something very similar that I've then tried here today, because I didn't want to do 2 times the same thing in the same week. I was doing here today cable flies to chest machine presses, which is very similar, right? It's not that much of a difference, but also great stuff for the chest, and it's a great feeling. I mean, what can I say?
And I was going to say, in terms of, so that's training, how's your nutrition? How's the body weight? Have you been on your target body weight kind of rate of gain? How's that going?
It's going great.
Awesome.
And I'm actually getting to the point now where I also can see that I have gained, especially in the face once again, and also slowly those visual cues we've been talking about that are the indicator of you being at the high end of your gaining range, so to speak, are now slowly starting to kick in. So some of the visual cues are slowly dissipating now, further fading away. But it's the perfect timing, because now I'm in the metabolite block, and I would need to make a decision of like, okay, where am I at? Do I need, or do I want to do a mini cut so that I can actually put myself into a position where I then further can continue a gaining phase, or do I want to actually then consider something like a prana phase and then directly going into a prolonged cutting phase or so. So this is actually the point where I wanted to be in the metabolite block, right, where I'm already kind of in a position where I should consider a cutting phase, because otherwise you're basically just wasting time just a little bit, right? And this is something that you have experienced in the past as well, just taking things way too slowly as well. And there's no true benefit in that one, I think.
Yeah.
Except for in some certain scenarios, yes, of course, but just what we are talking about in our context, I'm exactly where I wanted to be and where I need to be. It's just so funny because my upper body is just like the thing where I'm just holding all of the fat. It's crazy. I mean, also, I've been looking back at some physique pictures of mine from the last cutting phase. You can clearly see that nearly all of the fat was coming off of the midsection, for example. Like a huge amount. Like the midsection went from being, or the entire physique went from being kind of straight, then in the middle, kind of wobbly, and then straight down again, to kind of more a V-shaped curve. Which is crazy, because then it just like shows you that most of my fat stores are really just around the midsection, like really just around it. And it's so unfortunate because it just plays tricks on your mind. Whenever you see yourself in the mirror, it's just like, holy shit, you don't look good. But that's the price I have to pay. And this is something that I had to learn over now a couple of years, that this is basically what I will look like when I decide to gain. I'm not someone like you, for example. Who's holding most of his fat stores around the lower extremities.
Yeah, I don't know if my fat storage has changed, but I think it's still more lower, but it is a little bit more even, and maybe lower and on my back. Like I think my back, because for the back, quite often it just kind of like fat can just make it look thicker and bigger, whereas I think like, so it can make it look like, oh yeah, I'm gaining all this back thickness. It's like, no, you're just gaining back fatness. So I think that's what I end up doing a lot of the time. And, but yeah, I am the same. Like, it sounds stupid, but for me, when my chest striations like properly start fading, and same with like, I don't store a lot on my torso, but I can definitely see it there. And particularly with my like belt, I was on the smallest hole. I've transitioned to the second to smallest, and I know that hole is now potentially going to move if I push much further.
Where are you sitting at now?
Like that. So I sent you a picture this morning actually of my scale weight, because I finally hit, and not that like, I'm not like, oh, the scale is the be all and end all, but I want my body weight to trend up because it means I'm in a surplus. And I'd been sitting around 187, 188 pounds for like maybe a month. It'd been very slowly creeping up. So I finally hit 190 pounds this morning. I was like, yeah, fuck yes. That means it's trending in the right direction. And I'm just, if I'm 190 pounds this week, I think I'm a smidge behind my lower rate of gain target, which was 0.25% per week, which is 1% a month, which isn't that much. So I really want to make sure that I'm moving the dial in the right direction and putting myself in a surplus. Because like you said, for us right now, if we want to compete next year, we want to make the most out of every single time that we're in a position to gain muscle. A surplus is always the most surefire way to make sure you're making use of all your training. So no point kind of trying to be at maintenance. And I can now definitely appreciate why I did it a lot in the past, where I was like, oh, I'm in a small surplus. Maybe I'll gain this month, or maybe I won't gain, because it's comfortable being at like a decent amount of calories, maintenance. But being a surplus, especially for me in particular, it's just, every day is a battle to get it in.
And now you're already at a point where you're struggling with hunger again, right?
Yeah, it probably moved between 180 to 185 pounds. Felt great. Appetite was good. I was actually hungry quite a lot of the time. So pretty much after hitting 185 pounds, was like, oof, that's when my calories had to move quite up. So I hit like 186 pounds at 3,700 calories. And then to get from 186 pounds to now 190, I've had to move to 4,000. Just had to keep creeping it up. And it's just clear my body's like, does not like being over that high. I guess I'm getting to my higher end of like settling range where my body likes to be. I don't know how I got to 200 pounds now. It just seems ludicrous. I guess this is partly why mini cuts are so great, because you kind of bring yourself down a bit, but now you kind of resensitize hunger as well. So then you can push to a higher level. And that's, I think, maybe, like I looked in the past, maybe I did too many frequent mini cuts, but, and I definitely took one too early because I was still hungry at that time and still lean. But like, if they can help me get to a higher body weight without kind of force feeding as harshly and feeling crummy, then I think that's awesome. But
what's the strategy then moving forward now?
So I planned this out. It's really great because I knew by hitting 180 pounds, and I really like Cliff Wilson's analogy of like, every time you take off body weight and then you take off 5 pounds, you take off the blindfold and you look how close you are to like stage condition. And every step you get closer, you're more and more precise with what your predicted stage condition is going to be, which makes a lot of sense. And I was 180 pounds with like striations through many muscle groups. My quads were starting to come through. Glutes and like hamstrings were not through from the rear at all, I don't think. So it was good to then see Andrew Chappelle and Steph Noble, who are both pro naturals, and they were like, Steve, you're like really quite close. And I can't remember exactly what Andrew said, but he was like maybe 5. He didn't think 10 pounds more needed to come off. So I know my stage weight is going to be like low to 170 pounds. I think I'll probably want to get down to 170 pounds, maybe then reverse up at some stage. That would be really cool to be able to do kind of the metabolic building or bodybuilding taper. There's sort of different kind of words for it. The reverse diet, essentially. So yeah, what I'm thinking is I'm going to hit around low 190 pounds, rinse off quite a lot of fat, like close to 10 pounds in a mini cut, get down to the lower 180s, mass up again to 190 pounds, so where I am basically now, and then start prep. So I have like 20 pounds.
Start around March time then. So
yeah, I think it is around March. I can't remember. I have it somewhere. So yeah, I have like the mini cut for like 5 weeks, and then 3 more mesocycles of massing, and then prep will actually start after like a short primer phase after that. So yeah, rather than starting prep at 200 pounds, or rather starting a prep before the prep at 200 pounds, having to lose like a chunk and then maintenance and a chunk, I was like, well, why don't I start prep semi-lean at 190 and just have to lose 20 pounds? I thought that seemed like a good solution.
Especially because this year was a little bit of an interference with your original plans. So why then deviate too much from that original idea, right? Then rather hover around somewhere closer to stage weight, and then prep again here this next year, right?
Fast, efficient fat loss. Does that sound like music to your ears? The mini cut movement might just be for you. Mini cuts are like robbing the fat bank. You want to get in and out with as much fat as possible. In a short period of time, you could easily look to lose 6 to 12 pounds of fat. The mini cut movement is excellent. There's group support for extra accountability and also expert help within the group. We have educational videos to keep you on track along the way, and you get all your nutrition and training customized and individualized for you. So if that sounds of interest, get involved with the mini cut movement. Yeah. I know now I'm 190 pounds. That start of prep is going to be like, there's no way I'm going to be at all diet fatigued after 3 months of just over 3 months of massing, then some maintenance.
Yeah.
It should put me in a real strong position. And I know I'm going to start I want to do a later qualifier so that hopefully I assume I'll qualify for them finals. So it's nice having that experience. I think you can be a bit more precise with your planning. Whereas if you don't, then it's a little tougher because you don't know what your true stage weight's even going to be.
I really do hope that things will get better here the next year then.
Yeah. Did you see though, Bob Waterhouse?
What is it?
He went, he is a natural bodybuilder.
Yeah.
He competes in the BMBF and he's a pro.
Yeah.
He competed in the PCA, I think it was.
Yeah.
I think it was a PCA show and he went pro this last weekend. He won,
crazy.
It's an untested show. Yeah, he went pro.
I didn't hear about that.
His physique, you've probably seen his physique. I may have even shown it to you. He is just so classic. He's
Crazy.
competed against like Andrew Chappelle and kind of in the BMBF, and he's always done well in that federation. But yeah, to see him go pro as an IFBB and be natty, it's just like, fuck.
I think I've seen that. Who's he coached by?
Loads of people were sharing it. I don't know if I think he might even be self-coached. I don't know if he said he was coached.
I think I've seen, was it Peter Fitchen even posting about it or so?
Maybe. I'm not sure.
I've seen someone posting about like IFBB Pro, and he didn't look like someone who's enhanced though. Like very impressive. It could be that it was about him. So yeah, but
like
very
crazy
very cool.
Abs and like just classic lines. It's just like it's actually perfectly made for that.
Okay.
So yeah, it's just seeing people compete and do that sort of thing. It's just like, fuck. Imagine if you could ever do that. I mean, it's hard enough to win a natty pro card, let alone fucking going an IFBB pro.
Yeah, that's crazy. That's crazy, man. Yeah, but anyway, something else happening on your end?
No, unfortunately, I don't know what it was. I just thought I don't know if it's even particularly interesting to talk about, but I had not been feeling well ever since basically the roundtable that I recorded. And I don't know if this is just
because of the things that they've talked about.
It stressed me that much. It was actually very tense, but so yeah, it basically pushed my sleep schedule out 2 hours. And just, I don't know if that just threw me off really badly. And then a lot of the symptoms around that I suffered before with the like crazy satiation and real fatigue when I was very, very heavy started settling in. But then last night, I had a really good night's sleep. I woke up a bit later. I actually woke up, my alarm woke me up. So normally I wake up before my alarm, but I think that's not a sign that I'd slept well. It was more of a sign of my body's just not happy. And I'd been tossing and turning the last few nights. So yeah, I feel better now. But yeah, it wasn't fun. I don't know. You just, now and then I have those periods where I'm just like, my sleep is just off and there's no real apparent reason. It's just, I don't know. I'm a delicate sleeper, I think.
Yeah, but I can wholeheartedly relate to that. I mean, when there is a night where, I don't know, Hugo or Tony are doing something wild in the middle of the night, I had it just, when was it? When we've been in Leipzig, and I told you about it, it was the overreaching week. Didn't really sleep well, did sleep in a hotel room, right? And I was needing to take care of Tony and Hugo by myself until Katie was coming them back home because she was actually for the first time ever since Tony was born meeting some friends like on an evening and then actually going out, having a couple of drinks. And it was the first time that I needed to take care of Tony when he's waking up in the middle of the night. And then the next morning, I was supposed to do SLDLs in a gym that is not familiar to me. It just kind of threw me off. Everything felt heavy and so heavy. It was as if I was completely overreached. Whereas it was just like the environment basically, and then of course also the sleep. Yeah,
and actually, it was probably the sleep, and then also I met my friend Cameron on Sunday, and we did. I hit
donuts.
We had donuts.
The donuts, they were the reason.
I think it was I did 32,000 steps that day.
Shit, eh?
And I had legs the next day. It wasn't a good move.
Ouch, eh? It's so crazy because I have and had also a couple of clients who are living in an environment or area where they can always go out on hikes. And I can absolutely understand why they are doing that, because if I were to live in somewhat of an area where you could go on hiking trips, I would always do that, because hiking is fucking amazing. But the level that impairs your leg training is insane. Not just the leg training. If you do a hiking trip of like 40,000 steps, it's not just like 40,000 steps, it's like up the hill, down the hill and stuff like that. You're just like destroyed. And don't expect to perform well the next days.
No. Normally, I'm okay after those sort of days, but I think it was the combination of not having the best sleep and then doing those. I don't know what it is. Like, I'd say I'm okay at like long distance running, probably because I have like big joints and shit. So I just don't. It doesn't impact me that much. Although I think like my maybe abductor didn't feel great because of maybe the shoes I was wearing. I wasn't used to wearing. But anyway.
Yeah, should do more abduction training.
I managed to get through it. Just like you did your session. Yeah. Like those, I said it on Instagram. It's just like, it's so easy to call it quits for those sessions. And maybe sometimes you should, but knowing the times where you should just like dig in your teeth a little bit, or whatever it is, dig in your nails, like just put in the work and get back to your good practices afterwards. I think it's just people, I think, from the outside look in, or maybe they hear us and they think, oh, those guys are like, everything's perfect for them always. It's definitely not. Like half the time probably is not.
I mean, how was the donut then? I'm just asking because you brought up a very, very interesting topic here, like 1 or 2 days ago, about like junk food, palatable food, highly processed foods. And I think that you're now doing a presentation on it as well. And what's the minimum when it comes to mineral, vitamin intake, and then the rest should or could come from like highly palatable and processed foods, and you don't really need to take care about the rest of it. And so that's why I'm just asking, like, how was the donut, and was it actually pleasant to eat those, or was it more like, I still need to get my shit together here?
It's so, I'm always like, it's funny, kind of on a side tangent. I see quite a lot of people do like review protein bars or something during like a cut, and I'm like, I don't trust you. No. You're in a cut. Everything tastes good in a cut.
Man, sorry to interrupt you there, because I was just recording my latest vlog because Katie had birthday and I was baking a cake, and I ordered a baking recipe from Bulk Powders. By the way, I totally messed up. It was the worst cake that you ever had. It was dry as fuck, and you can't really swallow it. It's that dry. I completely messed up. And the good thing is that I have it all on tape, so just be prepared for the next vlog. Anyway,
was it a protein cake?
Yeah, exactly.
And you're baking it for who?
For Katie, but also a little bit selfishly so that I can have a piece of the cake as well. Anyway, while I was waiting for it, I also ordered like a protein bar from. No, that's not true. I had some protein bars in the fridge, and I was like, due to the time restraints, and I couldn't really have like a proper lunch during that time, due to taking care of Tony at the moment. It's all a little bit hectic and my schedule is a little bit all over the place. Had a protein bar, and I even said and recorded that to the camera, saying like, in the off season, protein bars taste so awful. Of course, there are some very palatable protein bars, but they are not just protein bars. They are like hefty meals already, like the Oh Yeah, for example, with 400 calories, or what else is there? There are a couple of ones.
I need some of those.
Right? Yeah, but they are not protein bars solely anymore. When they contain something like 17 grams of fat as well, they are just like coming with a lot, right? So, but the pure protein bars, where you have like maybe even a little bit of higher fiber intake and stuff, man, in the off season, they taste awful. And I was just like having that, and it was just like very back to earth, back to reality. Like, this is not good. This is not good. I'm just eating that for the sake of having now a protein bonus, but that is not good at all. So yeah, back to what you wanted to say. Not trusting reviews of people who are in the cutting phase.
This is partly hilarious because I remember in my first prep in 2014, me and Charlotte hadn't been dating that long, and I made her protein pancakes and put Walden Farm syrup over it. And I was like, this is like, you're going to love this. You're going to be super surprised. This is really low calorie and tastes great. And she was like, yeah, like afterwards, after my prep, she was like, you know, when you made me those pancakes, that syrup. Never do that again. They taste terrible. Obviously, she's not dieting, and I was in prep. So
Amazing.
it's
and you
wild.
were still at that point of your relationship where you couldn't be honest about it. It's just like being absolutely polite.
Oh dear. So yeah, the donut, it was good. I had the best one was the peanut butter and blackberry one. That one actually, I was like, oh yeah, that's nice. But at the moment, like, I'm terrible. If someone, like, if say Charlotte bakes something or she makes some food and she's like, oh, try this. She's like, how is it? And I'm just like, don't ask me, because I just don't care about food right now. Which actually brings me to one of the points in the presentation I make is like, it's really easy when you're on so much food to not take care to make it nice, but I need to put my effort into making my food nice because it needs to be tasty for me to actually be able to eat it. Because, like, I try and eat like some oats. I can't, like, plain oats with some milk. I mean, yeah, it's simple. It gets the calories in, but it's fucking hard to get in. I need to somehow make that a little bit tastier for myself. And I've got the calories to try and make it tastier. So yeah, the donuts are good. They're good donuts.
I think
they were crosstown donuts.
Worthwhile mentioning, though, that this is a rare thing for many people. Dealing with that level of satiety that you can't really get something down, even if you're already trying. And many people then opt for too much palatable and highly processed foods, in my opinion. Even up to the point where, yes, they are justifying it with, yeah, I'm meeting my minimum requirements for minerals and vitamins. But still, the thing is, we can go down the rabbit hole of what we've discussed, but we save it for a different time. When it comes to minimum intakes of something, don't think that this is the best way to go about it. But I think that this is then running into issues like later down the line with perhaps, I don't know, when you had it the last time, perhaps with the mass gainer shake. I think that maybe this was also one of the reasons, because maybe it was too highly processed for you or so. There was something causing you to have issues with that. And I think it's very worth noting that not many people are running into these issues. And before you are actually like flavoring things up here and there and trying your very best to actually make it more palatable, think about it like, do you really need it? Because someone like me, who's only like in a gaining phase of around 3,000 calories, do I really need it? Man, you have 1,000 calories more than me. 1,000. This is for some female athletes in a cutting phase the entire day of eating.
Yeah. It's crazy.
Yeah.
I think, it's completely right. One of the points I make in the presentation is like, you might think you need to go down this route of like increasing your appetite and doing all these fancy things, but the first thing you got to do is make sure that you got a decent meal frequency and you actually get calories in at appropriate times. Because I think a lot of people get they're like, oh, like, I don't know, they end up backloading all their calories. And it's like they eat like a dieter during the day, and then at night they eat like just a child because they've got like 1,000 calories to get in the last couple of hours. It's like, yeah, I mean, you're going to have to go palatable at that stage, but you should have just ate more during the day and not ate like a dieter. It's an easy habit to get into.
Absolutely. I'm very excited for that presentation, though.
Yeah, it should be good.
Yeah.
Right. Should we get to questions?
Let's do this.
Sweet. So, yes, the first question is from Thomas.
No, and it's from Andrew. He's back.
Andrew. Oh, sorry. Yeah, we have.
So
sorry. Yes, he absolutely is. Do we have any other supporter questions?
No.
Cool. So Andrew Pottercheck, my man, is back.
He's fine.
He has asked. Sorry, Pascal, for being away. Been busy.
That's all right. We already hugged, like, digitally.
Virtual hug. Yeah. Question. Lately, I've been reading a lot of papers and studying and come to the idea we don't really know. I think sometimes we should listen to the bro science, as that's where the base of all studying comes from. And most studies are not with trained people, so are we really certain? I believe there should always be respect for the guys who have got to the top doing what's tried and true for years. Thoughts?
Well, I mean, first and foremost, sorry to be that nitpicky, because not everything stems from trained individuals or people. Sometimes it's just an idea that is then being studied because someone is curious or so, or someone, it's called, what's it called again? When there's a new innovation or a new discovery, and based off of that, a lot of new discoveries can be made. So when there's adjacent possible, I think it's called adjacent possible. So basically when there's a new great innovation, so let's say the internet, it opened up so many new possibilities. And that's why a lot of change has happened. And this is also true for science, for example, right? Let's just say you're now able to, I don't know, maybe this is already possible, or basically back then when physicians physics, they discovered a lot of atoms, for example, right? That opened up a huge possibility of new discoveries as well, right? Because we now had a new baseline. And this is the same here, right? Sometimes there is a discovery and that leads down to further studying different topics that is kind of related to that as well. That doesn't mean that the bros have always done it in the past or so. There can be a lot of things that people have never thought of, but that because of one thing that has been newly discovered, a lot of new things are now being studied as well. That being said, though, sorry for once again being that nitpicky. Just wanted to clear things up that it's important to note that not everything is just stemming from them. They are and have done a lot of things right, but also they have done a lot of things wrong. And this is, of course, then the baseline or the basis for studying those kind of topics, right? Especially in the exercise science field. But we also have to then differentiate between bodybuilding studies and just like exercise science studies. A lot of things that we now know haven't been studied on bodybuilders, and still it gives us a good understanding about what we can apply to bodybuilding as well, such as nutrient, so studies on nutrition or so, right? Most of the time it's not being done on bodybuilders, but still the body isn't that different that we can't really apply it to bodybuilders as well. Maybe it will differentiate slightly, but it's not completely off. These are not just like completely different races or species or anything alike, right? So that's also something that we have to note. Still, yes, I think it's worth noting that there are certain things that are important to look at. And I also think, and this is something where I have changed my stance completely over the years now, that there are probably many, many things that will not be studied here over the next couple of decades, I think, that are applying to bodybuilders. And especially because it's a certain niche. And why would the biggest companies or so, or why would the majority of funders actually give money to bodybuilding studies? Not many people or not many companies have something for it or have any kind of benefit in that. There are companies such as Dymatize who also fund a lot of studies, but what's the benefit in actually knowing more about bodybuilding? There isn't, unfortunately, for us, right? Just from a personal bias perspective. But what's actually important is like studying diseases, I don't know, cell mechanisms in order to actually cure diseases or so, right? And this is also then where other things develop from, and where we then can perhaps even take some conclusions into bodybuilding as well. This is also one of the reasons why steroids are around. It's probably because of diseases and war. This is why we have most of the steroids that we have nowadays, not because people wanted to get more jacked, right? And it's the same with other medication as well that is then being abused in other fields and now becoming more and more popular in other fields where it's originally intended for other purposes, right? So I don't even know what I want to say anymore.
Was the only one I'm really ignorant to drugs, but I'm just thinking, was Trenbolone was used for like bulls, wasn't it?
Yeah, for cattle, like to feed up,
like produce more meat.
Exactly, to mass up cattle in a very short time.
Yeah, that's the only one when you were saying it, I was like, oh yeah, Tren.
Yeah, something like that, right? And this is why, do we really need bodybuilding studies? Like, honestly, it's just like a very simplistic question. For my own sake, for my own personal bias perspective, absolutely. Hey, I would love that, right? I would love to actually know more about what we should do in order to grow more muscle mass more efficiently or to maintain more muscle mass while we are in the cutting phase. But does the world really need more research on bodybuilding? Questionable, right? Questionable. I even think like the time and the resources are probably better spent elsewhere that really benefits human society and just like humans in general. That doesn't mean that there isn't room to actually go down there and study that, because there is. But yeah, I think that going back to just like what you've been saying, yeah, I think that at times looking more at bros is all right with a critical mindset, not just following it blindly, such as so many people are doing, and falling then for argument of authority as well. So many people are doing that. And this is just like following things blindly without any kind of true logic to it. And just like, yeah, switching off your brain and just going by your emotions, basically.
Yeah, I think it's a really tricky one because, first of all, do we really need studies and are they realistically going to happen? Probably not. And then even like, you're not going to get someone like Jordan Peters who's going to give up like months of his time to train a certain way for a study. He's not fucking doing that. And like, I don't know if I'd even want to commit to like, I don't know, I'm going to whatever it could be. Like, I'm going to train this way. And I look at it and I'm like, that just doesn't look like how I should train for muscle growth. So,
especially when we're considering like there always needs to be a huge discrepancy between the groups in order to see an effect. So it could be that you are in the detrimental group, that you are actually making some regression or so, right? And would that be cool? Of course not. I mean, yeah.
I see the future probably, or they talk about like twin studies were like the future, because it was like, then you remove the genetic, like maybe, I don't know if it probably doesn't need to be identical, but just you remove the genetic variants because you could have high responders, low responders just due to their genetics. Whereas like twin studies are really cool, or like doing one protocol on one limb and the other protocol on the other limb. That's pretty cool because then you actually get to compare, I don't know, in that person. But anyway,
we need clones in the future.
Yeah, clones. It'll probably happen, to be honest. Well, it's already probably, I don't know if it's
but
happened,
that would be the best outcome actually for studies. Like honestly, the thing is that when it even comes to twin studies, I'm not as familiar with the field, so I don't know all of the limitations and all of the benefits to it. But one thing that springs to my mind, and I don't know how much of an impact that can have, is like epigenetic factors. Right? If one twin was living in a completely different environment for like 10 or 20 years, how much are they now different, right? And still, can you still compare them to another? So we need clones. That's the answer.
Hey, Pascal here. I just quickly wanted to remind you of our online coaching service. At Revive Stronger, we put a huge emphasis on the personal aspect of our coaching. And if you want to take your physique and knowledge to the next level, hit the link in the description below.
Who's funding clones?
The only thing I was going to come down to, we have a good podcast coming out with Menno Henselman where I kind of dive into genetics big time actually, and maybe even touch on some of the things we've already talked about here. But I also talked to him about this kind of question of science is like not applicable because it doesn't study this certain given population. And Menno puts up a really good case for why science is freaking great and why it's really important. And you kind of said it there, like a lot of the fundamental things are very similar between humans. And so we can derive a lot from studies. And at the end of the day, evidence-based practice is like looking at the anecdote, looking what's out there, looking at your own experience through yourself and your clients and taking that along with the science and finding a blend. And I think it's wrong to ignore either side. We can't just copy the bros. We want to improve what the bros are doing with the science, and probably the science guys can improve what they're doing by looking at what's working in practice.
Yeah,
sure.
And that's unfortunately not always the case. That's the problem, right? It's a very dogmatic approach on the top or at the top, which is very unfortunate. And you said it, Andrew, like by the end, I believe there should always be respect for the guys who have got to the top, doing what's tried and true for years, thoughts, right? And the thing is, well, yeah, there should be a lot of respect for that, but you should also acknowledge that it has a lot to do with genetics as well. And I'm not just putting the genetic card, but these individuals, they are most of the times the ones who can do a lot of idiotic and stupid and irresponsible stuff, and they would still be at the top. All right. And that's something that needs to be acknowledged. And if you were to challenge those individuals with that, or you're someone who is kind of smarter and more knowledgeable in the evidence-based realm, and then you confront them with what the evidence is saying, most of the time you're just getting flack for it. And then they bring up examples of like Dorian and Mike Menser and what the fuck, right? Like, there is no mutual respect at the moment, at least not with the majority of those top athletes. And when we're talking about respect, to begin with, yeah, you can respect someone to actually get to a certain outcome, but that doesn't tell you a lot of whether this was the right approach or wrong, the right way to go about it, right? For example, just a very simplistic one is we always say like many, many ways lead to Rome. You could have taken the very shitty way that was not paved. It was dusty, dirty. There were monsters on the road. You are completely destroyed, and it took you 10 years in actually getting there. Or you could just take the highway and get there securely in a very short amount of time. Both get to the same destination, right? Would you then say like the guy who actually took the shitty approach was actually someone you should listen to or should look up to? Probably not, because he knew that the highway was there, but he didn't. He chose to take the shady route, for example, right? And this is something that we always need to keep in mind, and that's why being critically about these kind of achievements is good. It's healthy. That doesn't neglect the fact that you can respect that outcome, right? I would still respect everyone who gets to the top, but once again, we can also absolutely, without any kind of emotions to it, acknowledge like maybe it wasn't the best way in how we got there.
And I think someone I really respect who, and I don't know if he'd like to be characterized in this sense, but like Terence Ruffins, he's someone I really respect because I know he looks at both sides. I think he probably came from the more quote unquote bro circle, and he's done incredibly. He looks insane, yeah. And he's taken from the more scientific side as well. And I think like Mike Israetel, as an example, I think probably a lot of the listeners would think of him as like pure science. Definitely not. Like he definitely takes into account anecdote. He looks at what the guys in the field are doing, and the same with like Scott Stevenson, for example. Like very smart guy, but also doesn't discount what we're actually seeing in practice. And same with even Brad Schoenfeld, like the most sciencey guy. He'll still say things like, right now, science does not support failure training, but I have a real hunch that advanced guys probably want to train to failure, so he's not going to discount that.
If you're not a movie geek, and I were to ask you, okay, what's your favorite 5 movies? You would have a hard time on actually naming them, right? This is the same when it comes to like bodybuilders. If you are then going into an argument and you are very biased in the way you are doing things and what you deem as correctly, then you always bring up the same names, with neglecting and totally forgetting about the completely contrarian approaches to that. For example, the latest post by Jared Feather, where he just talked about the people who have done high volume and didn't advocate training to failure, for example. Right? And people never talk about them when the argumentation comes up with training to failure. They are only like looking in one way and seeing like, okay, Dorian Yates, Mike Menser, and who else is there? But these are the 2 names everyone is actually talking about. And then the hundreds of other people on the other side, right? And everyone is forgetting about them because they are so having such a tunnel vision then. And this is so important to always acknowledge that there are also a lot of other people who have made it to the top and with other, perhaps very, very contrarian approaches to how many people actually recommend getting to the top.
Yeah, I think it's a few thoughts come from that is I often see people say stuff like, oh, but this person trained like this, or like most IFBB guys who are pro do this. And I'm just like, how do you even know? Like someone like people look at me and make probably some assumptions in how I do things and probably get some things wrong because they're not with me all day and watch me do things. Like I don't know what the IFBB guys are doing. So people will make claims and statements based off like one video or one clip. And it's like, but you don't even know. And the only other thing I was going to say is like drawing the lines between these guys. And that's where science really helps because it gets you like some of the principles and then you can see, oh, like they both got to the end goal. They quite different approaches, but let's see what is similar between them. Oh, they both did this. Oh, that's probably something I should look at to do.
Yeah. And last but not least, it's a very the bodybuilding scene is still very kind of broish in that mentality. We still know that the majority of people, like 80 or 90%, I think, from one poll like years ago, are still doing like bro splits, right? And if you are getting into a specific field, such as bodybuilding, and you have a lot of authoritative figures perhaps around you, so you're going to the gym and it's a very meathead kind of environment, and everyone is telling you, like, this is the only way, right? And it's being repeated to you over and over again. You start to take this as the truth and reality. And if you're then confronted with something else and it became part of your identity and what you believe as to be correct, it's very hard to actually convince you to something else. And because especially the top bodybuilders have a very cult-like behavior, especially the top, they all know each other, right? And I've even made some experience with that without going too much into detail. Someone I know who's very, very big was actually confronted with that, right? When he wanted to actually try out something, he was massively confronted with a lot of the big guys saying, like, okay, if you do that, you will lose everything. You will lose muscle mass. You will not progress any longer, right? And if so many people on the other side are actually telling you that, right? And then they have perhaps some accomplishment, it's very hard to actually then still stay true to what you believe is correct. And we've seen it in so many other fields in human history as well, that if you get pressure from the outside, many people start to crumble instead of staying true to themselves and what they are believing in.
Yeah, it's like, I'm going to pull up a stupid example. It's like, I don't know, you've got this girlfriend or boyfriend and all your friends around you are like, no, they're terrible. They're the wrong one for you. But you know in yourself, that's the person for you. You have a fantastic time with them. But you listen to your friends because you're so heavily convinced that they're not the one for you. And now you've just lost your lover. Your what's it called? What's it called when it's the one and only true one for you? Your
love of your life.
Love of your life. That works.
Another example, and I think that everyone has heard something like that. We may not have an example in our head, but great minds who had an idea, who had maybe a theory of something, right? They came up with a theory and couldn't prove it yet. They made it to their goal, the goal of their life, to actually prove it to the other people, especially like in physics, right? Like Albert Einstein, he couldn't, it was post-mortem that some of his theories were first confirmed. And especially in times where there's a lot of dogmatism and innovative minds come out, if they wouldn't have stayed true to themselves and believed in what the theory is and what science says, right? Especially like, I don't know, go back in history, like very, very far back when the church was still much more present as well. When there were some people coming out like true scientists and saying like, no, this is how it is. Just like flat earth versus now realizing that the earth is round, for example, or like a spherish kind of sense, right? Or form. Then still sticking to what you believe and what the science tells you, while everyone around you tells you that you are wrong, right? How hard is that? And it's great that there have been so many people still sticking to what they believed in and have then proven like the entire world perhaps wrong, right? Because especially during like in the past, in the history, when science was still something like, what is science even? And they came up with a theory and no one in the entire world had actually that thought because they were so far ahead of the way that they were thinking in comparison to the people around them that it was just like, I don't know, blasphemy even, right? They stuck to their guns. And I know that this is a very exaggerated example, what it is, but to some extent you can actually bring it also to bodybuilding because we have a huge majority of people who think that this is the way to train. This is the only way to be successful. Right? But then we have a couple of people who also then now bring the science and actually show the other people like, okay, this is not what science tells us. So yeah, let's develop our thoughts on that one and also evolve from here with the facts that we have right now, instead of only going by what we believe is true. Yeah, long answer. Yeah.
I see. It's good though. And the only additional thought I have is, I think the nutritional side was it's a little bit ahead of the training side in that we have more clear understandings of what we need to do for nutrition, for building muscle and losing fat. Like it's pretty hard, pretty clear cut in many ways. Like there are some things we don't fully know, but the big core understanding is still there. Yet there's still people that are like, no, you must eat all clean food, and they can't cleanly define clean food anyway. And there was very much like when I came into things first doing this, I was on a bodybuilding forum and it was all meal plans, and it was all just like, yeah, eat these foods not to get fat or whatever. And people are more educated than that now. Like you don't even see those adverts like avoid these foods, like not to get fat. I mean, I don't see them anymore because science has come in and been like, this is the way. Or at least it's helped people understand what's really going on. So like bodybuilders were getting lean and jacked before understanding calorie balance and macros necessarily, but they were doing things via the principles anyway. And it was only working because they were like doing things that would reduce, increase energy balance, or rather decrease energy in, increase energy out, that sort of thing. And like LISS cardio, for example, like it's later that science has proved, oh yeah, LISS is actually pretty good for bodybuilding. But like, yeah, this, I don't know where I'm going with this, but for the nutrition side, like when I first came across like Alan Aragon, Lyle McDonald talking about flexible dieting, I was like, I can't do that. I can't possibly eat like a Pop-Tart, whatever it is, within my daily calorie intake and lose fat. Like that's a purely fattening food. But then I did it, and slowly I transitioned and I was like, I get it now. And so this is where I think training is slowly going, potentially. Yeah. But
yeah, and it takes time. I mean, these things, it's like, what's it called again? So Gutenberg developed the writing machine, right? So that you can print books. And what's the other name again? Who actually revolutionized the Bible? What's it called again? Martin Luther. Not Martin Luther King, but Martin Luther, right? He was actually going out there and saying like, okay, this isn't how you can do things, right? And we need to change the Bible. And that was kind of huge blasphemy, right? But this then led to more and more people thinking about it, right? And there has been a change then over time. And then now, a couple of 100 years later, we are at a completely different point. We can't expect that things will just change immediately. And especially in a realm of bodybuilding, it hasn't been around long, right? We still are far away from what really works for us, right? And understanding like us or the physiology behind muscle building process, like very, very in depth, right? We know somewhat, yeah, this should work, but in many, many ways we are still clueless. So over time then, of course, if people spread the word of like, okay, this is how it actually is, or this is what science says, right? And you can't really deny that. When science is actually telling you something, especially when the majority of the facts are leading some particular way, it doesn't really matter what you think, right? It doesn't matter, right? When science actually tells, or the majority of the scientific literature points in one direction, then it would just be foolish of you to just deny that. This is like as if you are a conspiracy theorist who's just like insisting on, no, this is the truth, and I'm the only one who can see through this. And that's why I have to tell you as well how the world is, right? And this isn't how it is. The science is there to actually, from a rational perspective and absolutely, hopefully, objective perspective, tell us what is going on in the world, right? And this is also how bodybuilding is then evolving over time and developing over time. And that's why I think that over time it will be a slow but gradual change towards more of a scientific evidence approach.
Yeah, it's funny. This reminds me of, I was on a podcast a long time ago and the person asked me like, what's your opinion on like calorie deficits and like fat loss? And I was like, I don't have an opinion. Like calorie deficit is fact. You have to get into a calorie deficit to lose fat. So yeah, it's just funny how like people, like you said, I don't care what you think. It's like, if we know we have this much evidence behind it, like there is your opinion doesn't mean a lot. And that's why anecdote is such a weak level of evidence. And I would never suggest someone just bases all of what they do off anecdote, which is what if you follow a pro, you just end up doing. And then that gets into the discussion of like, look at what they did to get there anyway, but that's besides the point. Should go into a new question because we've ended up.
I think we don't have any time left. Steve.
We have no time.
No. Well, it was a good discussion.
That's great.
And sorry for my a little bit of stuttering here. Due to the sickness, I'm having a little bit of a hard time breathing, and then so sorry.
You're still sick?
Yeah.
I thought you were recovered now.
Did you hear that? Was it lovely?
I don't.
Did you enjoy the sound?
My nose is nice and clear.
Yeah, no, not fully recovered yet. But it's just like having a stuffy nose. But if it's stuffy, like after a while, because I have to breathe through the mouth, it's making things a little bit harder than to concentrate at times.
Do we have to pick any winners this week?
Yeah, we do. But I don't have any kind of time left. Sorry. I mean, I should have come prepared a little bit better.
I wasn't sure if you've maybe done it in the coaching corner. I haven't actually listened to it.
I think we'll have to then do it like twice next week, if that's all right with you guys. We need a question or so.
What are people's favorite, natural or not, what are people's favorite bodybuilder to follow and listen to?
Yeah, that's a good one, because we now talked about kind of what the top guys like, are doing, for example.
Female, it's equally female, bikini, whoever. Yeah. That also works. I call them bodybuilders.
Cool. Yeah. Guys, I have to go.
Sweet. Guys, take care.
Picking up the kid and stuff. So I guess I speak to you guys next week. Cheers.
So I'm Steve Hall, founder of Revive Stronger and a coach of Revive Stronger.
My name is Pascal. I'm the co-owner of Revive Stronger and also a coach, of course.
Revive Stronger has probably been going solidly for 3 years, roughly about 3 years.
Revive Stronger, to me, it is becoming kind of my child, my foster child. It's the gathering and getting together of like-minded people.
We've been expanding the coaching team, which is helping us help more people, but each coach can only help a certain number of people.
Right now, it's all over the place. We have YouTube, we have Facebook, we have Instagram, but there isn't that community aspect behind that.
And so the next step for us is developing a membership site.
So basically, we want to create a family and a community that is then benefiting from another.
A really cool community for people within our little niche is going to be a website.
They will get early access to our podcast.
You can access us, ask us questions.
The community aspect, we have a forum there. You can ask questions, but also you can log your journey.
There's also going to be courses on there.
Courses, presentations on different topics. Discount of past seminar footage. We will log our journey as well. We'll start vlogging.
We're going to have documentaries.
Our entire athletic journey. Furthermore, they get access to an exercise video library.
The exercises that we love for hypertrophy and maximizing hypertrophy, we're going to go through those in depth, telling you how to execute them.
We kept them concise and also mobile friendly so that you can watch them in between your sets.
I'm super excited to grow this community. The amount of value that we're going to be delivering is huge. And I'd love you to be part of it.
You will get so much out of that.
I'll see you inside.